Good morning, Charles McCall again. And we're at 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 1. Again, I just want to remind you, these are very informal. I'm in my house. These are not really lessons, just thoughts that come to me, devotional thoughts, as I'm reading these passages, reading the Bible, my daily devotions. I hope you're doing the same thing. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 1, in the New International Version, all who are under the yoke of slavery should consider their masters worthy of full respect, so that God's name and our teaching may not be slandered. Those who have believing masters should not show them disrespect just because they are fellow believers. Instead, they should serve them even better because their masters are dear to them as fellow believers and are devoted to their welfare, the welfare of their slaves. These are things you are to teach and insist on. So, very, very many good observations and thoughts just from these two verses. One is that slavery was commonly accepted at that time. The apostles did not start a movement to abolish slavery at that time in history. But they just accepted it as something that existed in their society at that time. And so the word slave is really a bond slave, and it depicted somebody who was owned by someone else. And so the apostle says that if you're under the yoke of slavery, and this term under the yoke indicates a very difficult situation. And so the apostle says, look, we're in a situation at this point in history, in our part of the world where slavery is commonly accepted, and some of you who are Christians, you're slaves. This also is interesting to me, is that usually, from what I've read in history, that Christianity attracts the poorest of the poor to begin with. When Christianity goes into a nation throughout history, we said it's usually, as it says about Jesus, the poor received him gladly. And so usually when a Christianity is first going into a nation, it attracts the poor. And so we had slaves. We had slaves who were living a very difficult life. They were the property of someone else. They were owned by someone else. It was not a very good situation. The slave owners were not Christians, and they considered their slaves of the same value as a cow, as their property. And so, but Paul says, look, there's an attitude that we have to have. We have an attitude of respect and give them honor. Even though they're not Christians, even though they're being very nasty to you, we as Christians, we don't respond negatively toward them, but we respond in love. And we give them honor. It's another important point here to understand all throughout the Bible and all throughout the New Testament, God clearly identifies levels of honor, that there are roles in society that are due honor. He says it many, many times that we give honor. Children are to honor their parents. Employees are to honor their employers. Slaves are to honor their masters. Wives are to honor their husbands. And Christians are to honor those in civil government. And so there's the thought here that we're all brothers and sisters. You may be my boss. You may be in a role that is superior to me, but hey, we're all brothers and sisters here. And that's certainly true. But on the other hand, God has established a hierarchy of showing honor in the kingdom of God. And so there are those that, even though they're brothers and sisters to us, and maybe we have more experience in life, maybe we have more knowledge, maybe we have more love of God, maybe we have more power of God that is flowing through us, but we give them honor. We show honor to those who hold a position that represent authority in our lives. And so this is God's way. It works in our character as Christians to learn how to love those that are nasty, to love, respect, and obey those that sometimes are in opposition to us, and yet they hold authority. And so the attitude of, I'm not going to do this, I don't have to submit to you, I don't have to do what you tell me to do, is not found in the Bible. It's not found in the New Testament. It is not the attitude of a Christian. And so it's also very interesting just to note that when it talks about obey your masters, it's not the normal word kurios, the Greek word kurios, which means lord or boss, but it's the word where we get our word despot. It means an absolute ruler, somebody who has control over you. And so the lesson for today, for we Christians, is that God puts people in our lives, and it may be parents, it may be employers, it may be a pastor or a leader in the church, it may be a government leader, and God commands us to have an attitude of respect and honor toward that person. And when we do, that he will work things in our life that could not be worked into our life otherwise. And so Paul goes on to tell Timothy, it's imperative that you teach these things, that you teach and exhort these things. And so again, Paul has said this many times to Timothy, hasn't he? Teach and exhort. Timothy, this is a very important point for pastors and Christian leaders to teach those that they have influence in.